Welcome to the pilot episode of Budget Podcast. Budget Foundation is a foremost civic tech organization leading the advocacy for fiscal transparency and accountability in Nigeria's public finance, as well as across other African countries. We play an active role in project tracking and implementation in Nigeria's 36 states and also have a series of tech products that help citizens to follow the budget and government spending, thereby holding elected officials accountable. Join us every month for conversations on grassroots engagement, governance, public finance, budget analysis, project tracking and service delivery, extractive transparency, and social innovation. So, sit back and enjoy the episode.
Hello everyone, you're welcome to our podcast. This is the first podcast of Budget, we're glad that you're a listener to this podcast. We're going to talk around issues, we're going to talk about situations or things that matter to Budget. Budget is an organization that is focused on transparency and accountability, citizen and institutional engagement within the Nigerian space. I have here my colleague Adejoke Akimbode, who is our head of extractive transparency unit. And we're going to go on to different issues. Our focus today will be on the Petroleum Industry Bill. We believe that this needs to be further defined. I mean, recently we saw a video of two people beating up themselves in the National Assembly. And that really struck a chord in us. And we said, okay, let's come to a podcast to try and fully define and break down the Petroleum Industry Bill. Adejoke, how are you? How are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you, Lucian. Thank you very much.
All right. I mean, let's start with the PIB. I mean, so I remember that I took in 2012. I mean, there was a version of the PIB and we had momentum that it looked like we're going to get a PIB done by the previous administration of Goodluck Jonathan. And somehow that PIB did not happen. I mean, and this PIB history goes all the way back to President Olusegun Obasanjo. So we've been on this curve for a while. And if it serves me, my memory right, I think we may be on the sixth version of the PIB iteration. So it's been a long road for Nigeria. And I mean, what makes it so difficult to pass the PIB? Or what makes it so challenging that, we've been going on and on about this in the last 15 years or more?
Yeah, thank you, Lucian. For me, I think the passage of the PIB comes down to politics. So I believe everything is just being political, because if you look at in 2018, the PIB was actually split into four, and they were in the point of passing the governance aspect of the bill. But unfortunately, it wasn't passed. The president did not assent to it. And if you look at some functions of some institutions in the PIB, their functions and roles, I think, to me, I believe that's why they didn't assent to it, because they are trying to cut, to reduce power of the minister and all. So at the end of the day, I think it's just being political. So it's political because the PIB is one of the most controversial bill in the assembly now, since over 20 years ago, and one will be wondering why a particular bill is just lying down, a bill that we know that will be beneficial to virtually everyone in the country, and it's been lying down for over 20 years without being passed, if not political. So what else?
Yeah, I mean, so let's bring back our listeners. I mean, this is the 28th year, so the first effort to pass the PIB actually started in 2001. So we're on the 28th year of the process of passing of the PIB. That's number one. Two is that the law that mainly governs Nigeria's fiscal administration and governance of the petroleum industry was written in 1969. And in 1969, we must remember that, the spaces has changed, oil pricing has changed. We even passed that bill. It was not a bill, it was a decree. It was a military decree that was finally maybe ratified by the National Assembly to an act, but that was during the military era. So just imagine that we have a commodity that over the years have served us, that over the years have been responsible, sometimes up to 80% of Nigeria's revenue, sometimes now around maybe 55%. That also provides close to 90%, by the time you add gas to it, of Nigeria's export earnings in goods. And we have not been able to make adjustments to that space. In my head, that's where I see the challenges start off from. And I want to come back to you, Adit, okay, about this. If we look at I talk about the way Nigeria treats the oil industry. It's like in a rentier structure. So what I mean by that is that, for example, if someone's dad leaves an inheritance for him or her, and you don't clean up the house, you don't change anything about the house, you don't even try and check if the piping is working, if the people are even enjoying some basic commodities. But all you do at every point in time is just show up and collect rent. And I think that's the way we have treated the oil and gas industry. What are your thoughts about this?
For that, I would say the government, they know what they are doing. They know if they actually do what they're supposed to do with the oil and gas industry, the country will be better, and even the masses will benefit from it. So I think they're trying to, make it be like a political as a thing. It's just some people that will keep benefiting from this. Because if they actually do what they're supposed to do with the oil industry at large, everybody, every city, the whole country will actually benefit from it. Passing the bill will make it more beneficial to everyone, and it's going to reduce what some set of people are actually getting from the industry, which they don't want to happen. It's just like being the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer. That's just the case of the oil and gas industry in Nigeria as of today. So they actually know the right things to do. They know what to do to put everything in progress, but they're not doing it. And I think another thing that's supposed to do is we got it to a point where we would shift focus from oil and gas in Nigeria. We need to shift our focus. So if focus is being shifted to other aspects of revenue resources, then I think the oil and gas industry will actually make some very great progress.
All right. Okay. In the 8th National Assembly, which was on the 25th of January, precisely, like you said previously, the PIGB, the Petroleum Industry Governance Bill, was passed by the Senate, but as we agreed, it was not assented by the President. So over years, or when we said we want to balkanize or maybe break the PIB into bits, now we are back into a single entity or a single element again. We'll go straight to the PIB now. And when we read through the bill, we saw that 4 things were the major things that the PIB was meant to achieve. There had to be governing institutions that the PIB had to deliver, which are going to be the regulatory institutions in some sort of way. It's what replaces the DPR and even NNPC, because NNPC in some aspects is also a regulator within the current industry structure that we have right now. Provide a commercially oriented and profit-driven national petroleum company. Now that's a whole lot, because until recently, NNPC has been a serial taker, not a giver to the Nigerian government. There's been perpetual losses, and we've gone on and on with projects around that. NNPC losses are mainly driven by inefficient refineries, and also by the cost of its operational structure. It's just too high, and we'll touch a bit about that on NNPC. And the third one is to promote transparency, good governance, and accountability. That sounds like a good buzzword. Nigeria always says that we're going to promote transparency and good governance until you ask for accountability, and nobody wants to really answer. And the fourth one was to foster a business environment conducive for petroleum operations. There's so many things that this PIB want to achieve, but we've put it in fourth institutions, the profitability of NNPC, a little bit conversation on transparency and accountability, and also create a viable business environment. Now, there are what you call institutions. And we have put out the five institutions that we have seen in the petroleum industry. One is the Honorable Minister. No, there's this audio that says Honorable Minister is okay. Off your mic, Honorable Minister has been on this bill. I think the contention of this bill has been around the powers of the Honorable Minister. What's your take on this before we go to others? Yeah.
So my take is the powers of the minister needs to be checked and reduced. And I think that was what they did in the PIGB in 2018. And personally, I feel like that was why the PIGB wasn't assented to, because some powers of the minister was actually cut off. So, and another thing they should do is that I don't believe in the president being the Minister of Petroleum Resources.
Okay.
He can be the president and also be the minister of one of the, let's say, the powerful, agency we have in the country.
Why can't sorry to cut you. Why can't the president be the Minister of Education? Why can't he also be the Minister of Health? Why Minister of Petroleum?
Why Minister of Petroleum, where we actually get our revenue from, the major stake of our revenue? Why is the president why should he be the Minister of Petroleum? I think that's the first thing they actually need to look into. So I personally thought that would be part of what they will include in the bill, like some persons that cannot be minister. But then this is Nigeria.
So we can go back again to remember that in the PIGB there was a conversation to remove that discretionary power, and I think this is the major thing Nigerians need to understand. There's some extent today that we have gone back and forth. I remember we had the PIB infographic by budget in 2013. Those were the times when we felt there was a bit of momentum on the Goodluck Jonathan side.
Yes.
And it comes back to the first thing. We've treated oil like it's everything about Nigeria. So even when you talk about the budget, you get oil and non-oil revenue. When you talk about exports, you get oil and non-oil exports. So oil is like the defining term when it comes to Nigeria's fiscal and monetary space, which is why we have even failed to develop it every other sector. So if there's an emergency in the oil industry, there's also an emergency in education. So why can't the president choose to be the Minister of Education and be president? But from Obasanjo was also Minister of Petroleum for a while. He didn't appoint one. It was only Goodluck Jonathan, if I remember, appointed Mrs. Desiani, Alice Madwike, as the substantive Minister for Petroleum. What we've had either by Kachuku in the last 4 years, or currently as we have right now with Mipresiba, has always been Minister for State, which means that the entire oversight of that industry still lies fully within the president. And that kind of outlier is one of the first problems. And that's because there's an history around acreages being given out to people. So in the PIB, the current PIB that we have, there's still that problem still stays there. Because the PIB says that the other institutions that are there, which includes the midstream, downstream, Petroleum Regulatory Authority, which we think will regulate all the entire midstream, which is the pipelines, the entire downstream, which is the distribution itself, or the upstream regulatory commission, which is going to take over on the drilling, prospecting, mining, and also production. That entire, whatever licenses they are given in that place, is still subject to the approval of the minister. As an institution, as a bureaucracy, they are not allowed to say we have done it or we've done it. And I think the bill was silent about when the minister rejects the final winners, maybe of a bid or of an auction. What does that look? Or even when you have it in your mind that whatever you're trying to do, there's a silent note that would the minister like to see this, or would the minister love the world what we have made as a decision? That begins even to corrode the institution gradually and itself. And I think that's something that, as we have seen, going up and down and up and down. And we have examples of it. And I will come back to your editor. One was an example of, we have a woman, and I'm not going to mention names. There's been conversation about how she was just an hairdresser to the wife of the president, and the next thing, boom, the oil block was, got on a lapse. And that's the difference in Nigeria. You can be a pauper yesterday, and with the stroke of pen of the president or from your minister, somehow you find yourself rolling in billions down the line. And we have also even have the issue of OPL 245, which has become a big issue. That we have even a court sitting in Europe around a minister appointing or awarding a oil license or an oil lease to himself, and somehow he avoided it with a pseudonym in a very complex arrangement. And finally, when the tenure of General Sani Abacha ended, because he was minister during Sani Abacha's time, when that era ended, we found out that he came back again and said, "Oh, this oil block, finally belongs to me," and so connected people within the political class itself. And then we had back and forth till when we now have cases now of that there's been corruption, bribery, and everything in OPL 245. Why do we think, you talked about politics, you've talked about political economy. Is this still around? Is this part of the PIB, which is very, very significant? Is it still all around the issue of that the minister must, the oil industry must be a place to distribute privileges, or to be a place to distribute opportunity for people? Why are we fixated that the minister has to be extremely involved, in the final decision making for oil licenses or for midstream licenses? Why do you think we are fixated on that?
So in an ideal situation, I feel like the minister should be able to delegate tasks. This agency is responsible for license. Let them do their work. You don't need to meddle into their business. The minister might not even see the final people they want to give license to, probably until when it is being published for the general public in an ideal situation. But of course, even those people will not want to make that mistake, because everybody wants to keep their job, Everybody wants to probably do something that will make my boss. I don't want my boss to be angry. I have to dance to the tune of my boss always, whether it is what I'm doing is right or wrong. So in an ideal situation, it would be like that. But of course, in a country like ours, everybody is looking for favor. Everybody wants to. I want to be on my boss's good side always. So I don't want So they have to dance to that tune. So I think that the minister shouldn't meddle in things like this. Really, license, awarding of license and oil rigs and all should be the list of the minister's problem.
He or she should have stayed at the policy level or the strategy level.
Then considering the person who the minister of petroleum is, I don't think the president should be meddling in little things like this as the president and being the minister of petroleum. So that's why the number one thing is, I don't think the president should be the minister of petroleum, because he has too much things to do on his desk than monetary who gets one oil rig or the other. So, but in Nigeria, everybody, these are my people. You never can tell. The minister will even have his own list that, okay, these are the people my people must get license, whether they qualify for it or not. The people holding the license, they don't have any choice. They have to dance to his tune. They have to give it to them. So that is it. So everybody knows what is at stake, and they know if they don't do that, their job is at stake. At most, it's at stake. So they won't want to make that mistake. They have to do what the minister says they should do. So the powers of the minister needs to be reduced to the barest minimum. Yeah, it needs to.
Let's go that section again. It says it talks about having a fair, transparent, and competitive bidding process. It talked about the commission may publish a licensing program plan, and I don't think that word "may" should be there. It should or shall. And those are the kind of challenges when you have things now being done in the secret, because the question of may means you might or you might not. It leaves that to discretion. The minister may, on the recommendation of the constitution of the commission, may. That means the minister may not. Grant a prospecting license. That's section 73 of the current bill that is under consideration of the National Assembly. So, the chief minister shall inform the commission of his decision within 90 days of the application for a license or lease. And where he fails. I also think there's a challenge with the gendering of this bill. There's too many Nobody's even looking at the situation. where there is a woman in charge as the lead as the minister of petroleum, where he fails to inform the commission within the stipulated time, the licenses shall be deemed granted. So the rule gives the minister 90 days. The only saving grace I see from this bill has to be within the constitution of the governance. So we talked about that. We have 4 institutions apart from the minister and on the PIB. So we have 5 institutions. We see the minister as an institution because the bill itself recognizes the minister as an institution. Then we have 5 institutions, and I'll go over them. The minister, the Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority, the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, which is going to be the successor to NNPC, the Nigerian Upstream Regulatory Commission, which is going to be the successor to DPR, that's the Department of Petroleum Resources. Then we have the Host Community Development Commission. There's going to be a commission that will be involved, been doing all of that kind of work. And I just want to come close again to look at how some of these institutions themselves are set up in a way. So one thing I like a bit about this bill, because I don't want to talk about the bad part alone, is the fact that the commissions will be subject to the approval of the Senate. So that means the president will not, the hiring of these people will not be solely done by the Senate. But there's a problem. It says that the member of the commission may be suspended and removed by the president. And it says, and it lists all of that thing. Now, you say that the Senate can approve the member of a commission, but that's in section 11, subsection 3. It's appointment to the board of the commission, which is the commission for the Upstream Regulatory Authority, which is the one that addresses issue of mining license and everything that has to do within the upstream and the downstream sector. You say that that person can be put in there by the Senate, can be appointed by the Senate. But you also say that the removal of the person is only is only going to be done by the president. There is no checking with the same Senate that has approved the person. And in a situation where that's the regulatory commission that oversees the petroleum industry, Adejoja, as you can see, there's a silent power play in that environment.
So if the Senate is appointing someone, then why should the president have the power to remove the person without even consulting the people that appointed the person? Because what if they appointed someone that doesn't like his face? Then he'll be like, oh, I don't like this person, let me remove him. And look for one person excuse and remove the person. So I think even if the president is not right, but even if the president feel like he wants his candidate there, he can make recommendations to the Senate that okay, I feel like this set of people are capable. And when the Senate, when they do their their normal way of appointing people, he might block him. Probably one of his persons might even be appointed. He can actually make recommendations to the Senate, but he shouldn't have the full authority, the full rights to remove anybody without consulting the Senate.
Yeah, so that happens to the commission and what is referred to as the authority. The authority, when I say the authority in this document, the authority is the Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Industry. And for people who don't know, the upstream is the drilling is the production of oil, the drilling, the prospecting, the searching for the oil, and all of that is what you call the upstream. The midstream is the movement, so the piping, the transmission of that oil production and moving across piping and across channels, maybe up to the point where you are either passing it domestically or you are moving them, or trading them for offshore exports. That's the midstream. Then the downstream is the distribution, the one you buy, the one that is stored in tank farms, the one you buy at your filling station, the one that is marketed or imported to you. That exactly is what we call the downstream. We're going to touch. We've touched on the minister and the political economy of that, and we made a point in that. We made a presentation with civil society on the on the current PIB and some of the issues we have here. And now the discussions we are discussing here where it was in that memo that was provided to the PIB, to the committee overseeing the PIB. One of the things we also said that is also we should know is that the rule, I don't know how this works, as in the case of a national emergency, the minister shall have the right of preemption. So that means if there's a national emergency and there's a need for maybe oil production the Nigeria needs, maybe let's say we need petrol, maybe there's a shutdown, the minister has the right to take some of these petroleum products and use that to solve the issue of national emergency. But no, those are things that you have to put in extreme cases. It should not just be the norm. And we've talked about the institutions and the NURC, which is the Nigeria National Upstream Regulation Commission, and that's all going around the issue of keeping the registers for licenses and leases, management and administer of the data, regulatory of all of that. Then we talked about we also manage what they call the Frontier Exploration Fund. So that would be 10% of all rent on petroleum licenses and mining licenses. Then we also have the downstream, which we have a chief executive. They will submit their budget to National Assembly, and that will be done by distribution of all the licenses and things like that. So they will take the part of NNPC, what NNPC does with the PPPRA, and what the NPC does with his PPMC previously, the PPRA, bunch all of that together, and they'll be responsible for permit and authorization and licenses as required across board. There's also a fund that's called the Midstream Infrastructure Fund. That will be 1%. So definitely all petroleum products, we have 1% tax. And I don't think maybe Nigerians know this. So maybe if your oil price, if your fuel price is 100 naira, the federal government will put a 1% value with naira on it. So that, and they said that will be related to investment in government-owned infrastructure, such as processing, storage, and transportation of oil industry. So there are some taxes that will be borne on Nigerians. Let's touch briefly on NNPC. I mean, this is the monster inside this bill, and when we look at the PIB, it looks like the PIB is being pulled on different sides. And what I mean by the PIB being pulled on different sides is that you have the oil producers themselves. They have an association. You have the NNPC as his own interest. You have government as in their own interest. You have people in the national as their own interest. So there's so many interests in the PIB where it's structured. And I think the biggest interest in that in NNPC. But the first question I always ask people is that there are two problems here. One is that NNPC itself should be an entity that not just acts on behalf of government, but is even generating revenue for the government. That's number one. And number two is that can the structure of NNPC as it is right now, can it survive in a private structure? Can NNPC, if it is a business and not just a state oil company that is acting on behalf of the government in separate elements, can NNPC itself survive in a private arrangement as it's structured right now? Are you okay?
It cannot. It definitely cannot, because the structure of NNPC as it is now, is not even profitable. So if it's a private entity, then I'm sure they will have shut down the business a very long time ago. So it cannot survive as a private entity. The way it is being managed and the way it is functioning right now, it cannot. So a lot of things needs to be changed and put into consideration if it's going to be a private entity and they want it to survive the environment.
And we can come back to the NPC, and I think there's a problem here, because I think this bill just tries to make everybody happy, and they say it's only jollof rice that makes everybody, happy. For example, this bill says that NNPC is going to have shares. They're going to invest that shares in a new company called the NNPC Limited. Those shares will be held by the government, and the Finance Incorporated will hold those shares. The employees of NNPC shall become the employees of NNPC Limited. So a new entity will fill all staff obligations. So you have written a bill that does not attack the oil unions, in a way. So for example, I always make this case. Someone can start his career in Kaduna Refinery, and that refinery on the entire length of his career does not produce more than maybe does not even process more than maybe 1,000 barrels of crude, and the person is going to retire. He or she is going to take pensions. He's going to enjoy fat. He's going to have lived well. And if you say all the employees of NNPC will become the employees of NNPC Limited, and you have not found a way to really look at NNPC as well and break it down and say, okay, what's profitable, what's not profitable, what do we? And I think in the last PIB, the one we had before, created a liability company that was supposed to manage the entire obligation of NNPC in a place that if there are entities of NNPC that does not want to be transmitted into the new NNPC Limited, that liability framework will undo that. But what we have seen right now is that it looks like we just moved rather than call NNPC a state oil company, now we just allocated shares and say now this is the new NNPC. There's nothing I've seen in this current bill that makes it look as if NNPC is anything's going to change specifically. But because it also leaves a whole lot of things to discretion. It says the minister or the minister of finance shall determine the assets, interest, and liability of NNPC to be transferred to NNPC Limited or its subsidiaries. So even after you finish all of this, the minister will decide, okay, am I moving this unit? And I think that level of discretion, they left a lot of things to chance in this bill by allowing the minister of finance to decide in his best interest if the refineries will go into the new NNPC, even if the downstream sector will be handled by NNPC in the current new NNPC, even if the entire staff, the operational structure of NNPC is still going to be there. Will anybody look at NNPC in a way and will say, okay, I want to buy shares in that company? But and also another thing is there is a problem here, is that it's also the issue of independent incorporated joint ventures. So let me just wind down for a lot of Nigerians who might not know. So we have our main structure for petroleum systems, for petroleum mining or petroleum structure. Our fiscal structure is either you have it as a what you call a joint venture, or a production sharing contract. A joint venture, like you can hear the voices, that means NNPC and the oil producers, maybe the IOCs, are jointly doing stuff together. While a production sharing contract means that you put all your money, you go and explore the field, and the government has now a tax on your profit and also has a bit of equity as we go. So in the joint venture is more like equity. In the production sharing contract, it was more like produce, deduct your costs, then we'll tax the remaining out of all of that. That's the separate structure we have. But those joint venture is Nigeria has equity in the joint ventures. And one of the things that has been there is that these joint ventures should run like companies on their own. So they should be able to raise their own funds. Because over the years, one of the challenges that if you have a joint venture, you have to continuously invest in the field to get the joint venture to keep going. But Nigeria has not been able to always bring its investment to the table, for the joint venture. And that's been a problem over the years. And now that there is even no timeline, specific timeline, something we saw in the previous bill, that the incorporated joint ventures should, by the specific time, should be incorporated, and they should be able to stand on their own, raise their money, raise their debt, and maybe somehow they begin to operate in a way like a production sharing contract. Okay, what do you think of that?
Like I was telling someone last week, I said the NNPC and the new NNPC Limited is just I said that's just a change of name. Nothing really different in what they want, in what both companies would do, what NNPC was doing and what the limited company would be doing. Because if you are saying you are going to transfer the employees, you are going to, the Minister of Finance and the Minister will determine the assets that will be transferred and all. We all know that NNPC as it is today, most of the assets are not profitable. So there's nothing to determine again. We already know the subsidiaries that are functioning, that are making profits, and the ones that are not making profits. So there should be a total overhaul of the old NNPC before they can transfer anything to the new NNPC Limited. So
I'm going to question. Let's assume that I work in a refinery, and they say this is the new NNPC Limited. And you say, okay, we are sorry, maybe we don't want to transfer the refineries to the new NNPC Limited, because we don't want the NNPC Limited to have them. But you say all the staff are still NNPC limited staff. So what exactly will those personnel be doing? That's my question. I begin to wonder. So why is no one thinking about this? But like I said, it looks like a bill that just tried to make everybody happy and excited, just because you want it to have passed. But it doesn't look as if we are pushing for efficiency as it should be. Let me get your final point on this.
Because let's take the refineries for example. So the refineries have they've never been profitable for a very long time. And so we are now transferring the same set of the same refineries, the same set of people working there to the new limited. I see that's transferring a very big problem to the new company, because they need to actually look at, okay, so Kaduna Refinery, for example, is not profitable, and we have let's say 1,000 workers. What do we do? Then they need to cut their staff. Fine. So people will be affected. It's not a new thing in Nigeria that they disengage people everywhere, and they need to cut their staff. Probably maybe those that have spent 20 years and above should leave and leave the younger ones. Or maybe there should be some criteria that they will use. They can't just transfer the staff and to the new limited when you know that even the assets you're actually giving the new company is not profitable. And before the new company can make it profitable, to take a long while. So why are you giving them a problem? I say that's a very big problem to the NNPC Limited. They are doing all those things. You need to look at NNPC as it is now. Amendment. So you want to transfer anything from it to the new NNPC Limited. Might take
a lot of time. All right. Finally, this is a 2-part series. We're going to take a break and we'll come back in the second part series, and we're going to look at issue of host community. That we beat. In this episode, we've looked at the minister. We've looked at NNPC itself. Looks like it's just you're just working across rooms and nothing much is going to be changing if you're moving employees and assets. If you have not even set a timeline for the incorporation of the joint ventures that the federal government over the years has not been able to properly fund. And we've also now looked at into all the agencies and also around where the president can appoint someone subject to approval of the Senate. We have allowed the Minister of Petroleum or the President to be able to remove the person without even oversight. That gets us a bit worried and gives in terms of independence to the agency itself. So we will stop here. And thank you so much for listening to the first part series for our podcast. We hope you enjoy it. We would like to have your feedback. Please send us a tweet at BudgetNG, or on Facebook. It's also called BudgetNG, or on Instagram it's BudgetNG, and we'll be glad to hear your feedback on the current Petroleum Industry Bill. Thank you. Adejoke, you want to say goodbye to everyone?
Yeah, thank you everyone for listening, and do join us some other time again.
Thank you. Bye. Have a good one.
Thanks for tuning into our podcast. If you have any questions, do not hesitate to reach us via our social media platforms, or you can send an email to info@yourbudget.com. We will be back next week for the second part of this series on the Petroleum Industry Bill. Do not forget to subscribe to our channel on all podcast platforms. See you next week.